I thought this movie was, in the parlance of Mad Max, mediocre. Nerd Legion returns with a hot, fresh new release that nobody has seen because apparently it had
I guess
the worst opening in Memorial Day in many years, DoA, which is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Is it sad?
Furiosa, a Star Wars story, is what we'll be talking about today, and it's I loved it. I thought it was a great movie, legitimately, and it's got very good reviews. It's got very good audience reception. But the sample size is apparently very small because, it had a 26.3 million opening, and it's only made about, I just checked right before we started recording, it's only made almost 51 million so far overall, which on a 168 million budget probably isn't ideal. How this movie costs more to make than Fury Road, I do not know. Maybe it's just inflation. maybe it's using two of the hottest stars in Hollywood right now. Maybe, who knows? But do we want to just start with that? Do we want to talk about our theories why it did poorly? Because I think there's a lot of obvious reasons. If I can start, I think the first obvious reason why this movie did poorly was because ultimately Mad Max is a niche property, and this didn't have the large scale car flipping spectacle that mainstream spectacle that Fury Road had attached to that movie. So without that mainstream hype element, then you've just got a Mad Max film, which is too niche, right? And so in that sense, that's one of the reasons why I think people just didn't go see it. They're lost, but I think that's one of the reasons. What do you think?
Well, DoA, as we'll get into, I thought this movie was, in the parlance of Mad Max, mediocre. Because, frankly, nobody wanted this movie. That's the problem, though, is that nobody actually wanted a prequel to Mad Max, including me, who has Mad Max Fury. Mad Max Fury Road is one of my favorite movies ever. Okay, and I don't want this prequel. And after I left the theater, I still didn't want it. So,
see, I'm kind of the opposite. Where Fury Road is definitely one of my favorite films of all time. I think it's just objectively a fantastic movie. And so when this was coming out, I was not excited about it. I had the same feelings where I'm like, I don't feel like we need this. But then I saw it and I was like, all right, this did everything I feel like a prequel should do. It expanded what you know about one of the characters from the previous film. It did some pretty cool world building, I thought. So I
didn't want any of those things. I didn't want world building. I didn't want expansion of the character. Why? What is the point of world building?
Because it helps you understand the world more.
I don't want to understand the world more. I don't want to. I got everything I needed out of the first one. This is the same bullshit. This is the same bullshit, DoA, that Star Wars did, that fucking, we don't need
you're not ready
more
for the Mad
universe.
Max
I wish Star Wars had never been made more than the first three films. I wish that was the case.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm not surprised that you wish that, but I profoundly disagree with you. Of course.
You know why? Because everything else from Star Wars has been trash, and it has ruined its own universe through over explanation and, as you call, world building. You know what? I didn't need to know the Force was midichlorians in the blood. That actually just ruins the Force. That ruins the Force straight up.
Never heard of midichlorians.
Exactly. So you're just ignoring. I don't know what you're talking about. That's world building. You love that, apparently.
Well, no, that's the thing about a fantasy universe, about a universe that doesn't exist. You can just take the parts you like and enjoy those, and just discard the other stuff completely. It's yours to do with as you choose. So with thankfully with Mad Max, and like I'm of two minds on this, because I agree with you that Star Wars has become massively bloated. By the way, as we record this, The Acolyte just dropped their first 2 episodes. Can't wait to record that show next week. Hype. But
I will rage out of control, probably.
I can't wait. I love doing Star Wars shows. But with Mad Max, like, it's interesting because it's not a universe you would ever expect to get sequels and things. Although in this Hollywood, in this economy, like, be not surprised by any sort of prequels, sequels, spin-offs, anything like that. This was one of the ones, though, one of the rare ones that I do think worked, and I'm sure we'll get into many reasons with that. But I am mostly on your page with the not wanting prequels, sequels, all that kind of stuff, except for Star Wars. Then I'll watch everything, even though I plan on disliking it. But like, I'll still watch it. But with everything else, generally, like, I didn't want Ghostbusters sequels. I didn't want, I don't know, you name it, right? There's too much Marvel stuff. Like, but the Mad Max verse, I just love being in that universe, and seeing, as the thing is, the difference between this and the Star Wars stuff is that in this one, George Miller, Nick Lathoris, if I'm pronouncing his name right, they're still writing it, just like they did Fury Road. So you've got, the same people still making it. So it still has that same vibe. And I just love the Mad Max world, right?
Yes.
And I love being in that world. So,
but it doesn't need more explanation.
And the story was pretty good.
Let's talk about, and you asked why this did badly. And the answer is because nobody wanted a prequel to that movie. Nobody is excited about it.
It's just niche. Yeah, because it's just too niche. It doesn't have, like, Mad Max, despite Fury Road being a very good movie, didn't make anyone a Mad Max fan. It made them a Fury Road fan, right? Mad Max Fury Road is still way too detached from the original films in like the 80s. Maybe was there one in the early 90s? Was Thunderdome early 90s? Or was that still 80s? I can't
80s,
remember.
I believe, yeah.
I think it was still 80s. But like so there's just no fan base, right? Like, there's a fan base of the film Fury Road, but there's not really a Mad Max fan base. So, like I said, I think that's the problem, is that Fury Road succeeded because it had this huge mainstream hype about the car element, about the stunt element to it, not about Mad Max.
It also,
when we only have the Mad Max, and there's, obviously a lot of
there's
CG
no Mad
stuff.
Max, let's be clear. There's no Mad
Well,
Max.
I mean, we only have the Mad Max world, is what I'm saying. The Mad Max name, right? We only have that world. That doesn't give us a lot because, obviously we can't make Fury Road again because that was an insane production. If you go back and read about it, there had to be a lot more CG in it. The CG succeeded in some parts, really didn't succeed in other parts in this film. But, I think, again, you needed that spectacle because people aren't Mad Max fans; they're just fans of Fury Road. So, I think it's the no mainstream hype, right?
So let me talk about why this film doesn't really work for me, and why I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think it's like thoroughly mid, and it doesn't do anything that I wanted to do. And like, honestly, I kind of wish, for the same reason that I had never seen any more Star Wars beyond the original trilogy, I kind of wish I hadn't seen this, because the whole operation of Star Wars, because you have to remember that Star Wars is based off of mythological concepts from Joseph Campbell. And the thing about mythology, and it also applies very deeply to Mad Max Fury Road in particular. I rewatched Mad Max Fury Road the day before I watched Furiosa, and that movie is still fantastic. And the reason why one of the reasons why it's so good is not only that it has all of the car elements, it also is mythological in scope. And by that, I mean, one of the most compelling aspects of Mad Max Fury Road is that Max shows up, is immediately captured at the start of the movie, and is thrust into the world of the Citadel that he does not understand. It's an entire functioning micro society, and he has no clue what is going on. And then he gets roped into this car chase while they're chasing Furiosa, who has stolen the wives of Immortan Joe. And so he is swept up in an action that is beyond his control or his comprehension. And the thing is that the world is very fleshed out, but I don't need explanations, because Max is the proxy for the viewer being thrust into this established situation, right? Mm-hmm. And Furiosa and Immortan Joe are the characters who know what's going on, who are a part of this society. And by explaining all of this stuff, it ruins a lot of the magic of it. And I don't know, or I don't need to know about it. And I also, frankly, just don't care. I don't give a flying fuck about Gastown and the Bullet Farm. The only thing I need to know, DoA, is that these places exist, and my mind does the rest. The mythology of the Green Place is more powerful than actually seeing the Green Place at the start of Furiosa. Because it's a myth. It's a story. It doesn't have to be explained. And that's what's also great about Mad Max, the entire series of movies, is that the timeline is left intentionally ambiguous. And George Miller says there is no timeline. Like, how do we, obviously, how do we get from the original films to Fury Road? How do we changing actors? It's like mythology. The timeline can be ambiguous. It's like in Greek myths when you have multiple origin stories for the goddess Athena. You don't really know when things happened a lot of time in original mythology. And that is, or things, multiple explanations for the same thing. That's totally fine because it's about the imagination. And what Furiosa does is it strips your imagination of what is happening. And it strips the wonder in the same way that Star Wars completely stripped the wonder out of it, because it too is a mythological fantasy epic. And people think it's sci-fi, but it's not. Like, Star Wars is fantasy, and Mad Max is fantasy.
Well, yes, it's sci-fi fantasy.
But I mean,
Star Wars
in tone, it's fantasy. It's not hard science fiction.
For sure. But ultimately, while everything you say is true, and I'll quote Obi-Wan on this from a certain point of view, and I'll also quote The Big Lebowski on this too, where ultimately, that's just like your opinion, man. Like, it's your desire to not know more.
It's the public's opinion, because DoA, the public, like I said, the public doesn't want to fucking know more. Apparently, like, people don't want to watch this movie.
That doesn't make it a bad film, though. That makes it a film that you didn't want. I enjoyed it. I didn't feel like I needed it, but when I saw it, I'm glad I did, because I did enjoy it. You know what's funny is that there's so many parallels actually between George Lucas making the prequels for Star Wars and George Miller. They're both named George. I didn't realize that until right now. Making Furiosa is that we have a prequel that does expand the universe to a degree that infuriates people. You are one of them. I've had other people I've heard say the same thing. Again, I don't agree with that, but and we also do have a large amount of politics in the prequel, which is a strange coincidence that politics is a big element of the story. In this case, the political interactions between these three cities. But I thought it was, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie thoroughly. The only things I didn't really enjoy about the movie was when the CG got a little bit too obvious here and there. But I thought the story was fun. I thought Chris Hemsworth character, I thought he was very fun as Dementus, seeing that character progress as kind of just like, outlying lord that kind of use conniving and cunning to like get himself into be a big player in the
I
big
think he's
three
so not memorable in this movie, and I don't think that's his fault, by the way. I think this is
fun. I think he's so fun.
He is badly written and badly created as a villain. And he's a very.
I feel like you went into this wanting to hate it. This feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy to me. Are you sure?
I went into this wanting to love it. I love Fury Road.
Okay. So we went in with opposite sort of feelings, so hyped because I went in expecting to dislike it.
I literally watched Fury Road the night before watching this because I wanted to be in the right headspace for this, and wanted very badly to like this.
I like Fury Road, but I fully expected to not like this. This movie had to prove itself to me, basically, is how I approach it. I approach this movie like I approach all the Star Wars stuff, where for me, my opinion starts at like, if 0 is the baseline, it starts at like -10, and it has to like get back up there itself, And I felt like this movie did this. Like Chris Hemsworth was really fun as Dementus. Like the progression of that character, I thought was really interesting. That he's cunning enough to sort of, bamboozle and scheme his way into all these situations, and he's dangerous enough to like follow up on it with the brutality, but he's also like a narcissistic, terrible leader. And so whatever he manages to seize kind of starts to fall apart, which is an interesting, I think, threatening dynamic for a villain, because he's the villain that wants everything, but then once he's got it, will just sort of like end up destroying it all, which is almost worse than a competent dictator, and I think that's why like Immortan Joe, feels genuinely threatened by this guy, because he's like, oh man, he's actually like kind of smart and he has an army, but but he has no capability to actually lead, when it comes to settling down and being a king. He wants to be a king, but he doesn't understand the job once he's there. And I thought that was an interesting premise for a villain. And seeing that play out was fun. The color changes over time with him, you know, that he starts out in sort of this like the white purity of his. Right, exactly. Yeah, but that's like him in his element. He excels at being this biker lord just roaming around causing problems. Then he takes on, you know, kind of the more violent, brutal, you know, nature with the red when he seizes Gastown, right? And then he becomes a sort of like brutal dictator, sort of. And then he gets covered with all this like oil and stuff like that, and his garb turns to like black, and then he's just sort of like the Lost, where he's just a destructive force with no real capability to sort of like make good on whatever he wants to take, you know? So I thought they did some interesting visual stuff with his character throughout the film too. So I thought the character was really fun. You can tell Chris Hemsworth was having a ton of fun being the character. I thought it was funny that they gave him like a big fake nose, which apparently worked because, you know, my wife didn't even realize he was Thor until I told her later. I know. I don't.
Do you have face blindness? What is that?
I don't know. But she did not recognize him, which I think is great. I think it's awesome that he was able to disappear via a large nose and a funny accent into his character to the extent that some people out there didn't realize he was Thor. So yeah, I had a ton of fun with that character. I liked it a lot, and that's the reason why. And they also gave him like a little bit of a shred of humanity too, right? He carries around this teddy bear that's like a memento of his dead children, which is a heavy thing, right? And then he tries to make Furiosa kind of his child, but again, he takes something and has no idea what to do with it. You know, he ends up being a terrible father to her and all that kind of stuff too. So just the element that he's very capable of taking things and very bad at you know, managing them once he grasps them is I think again like a very interesting dynamic for a villain. I'm trying to recall where I really kind of saw that type of thing before, you know?
Your explanation of it is much more compelling than the actual presentation of it, which is my problem. I agree with you in theory. I think it does. I don't think it succeeds at doing the thing you say it's doing.
Really? Because because I got that from watching the movie. So I mean, like, so
I think you're hyping it up. Like if you actually come down to the execution of it, which we'll get into, we get into the movie. But first, I do want to talk about why I think Mad Max Fury Road was so successful and why I like it so much. Like I said, I enjoyed the fact that we were thrust into this world, and I really like that world of Mad Max, and I think it's super compelling. But by not over-explaining things, and it's worth noting that George Miller was writing this for 15 years before Mad Max Fury Road was released. And so,
and notably, he also wrote the Furiosa parts too, and he wanted to film them sequentially. So this was the original.
Well, he wanted to film them at the same time. Yes, but that doesn't mean it's a good plan. I'm sure if George Lucas had gotten like all of the, remember he also had these plans. The thing that I liked about Fury Road,
he's George's,
is that when you look at Mad Max, you can tell that it's a very fleshed out world, and it's great that they did all of the background work to get the world to that place in a place that makes sense. But sometimes you just over explain. Like we don't actually need the explanations for these things. We can just appreciate the world that exists. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to read the Silmarillion to appreciate the Lord of the Rings. And in fact, the Silmarillion should probably be deleted from the face of the earth as well, because it's just garbage.
Oh, man. I can't wait for the comments on that statement. Delete the Silmarillion. All right.
But you know what I mean? Like the Lord of the Rings works because Tolkien put a lot of effort into the background, and we don't have to know all of that background. If Tolkien does as he's writing from it, it can be inferred. You know, that's the thing about mythology is today we don't know where a lot of original myths came from, right? They're permutations of a story over hundreds of years, and we don't need to know. We don't need to know for them to be resonant and impactful. And so I think that one thing that really worked about Fury Road is that it wasn't explained. And I don't care what George Miller wanted to do. I'm going to evaluate the piece of art that he created, which is Fury Road, and it stands alone extremely well. And I don't really have curiosity. In fact, what I would have wanted and what I think would have been better for a Mad Max movie, DoA, is Mad Max goes somewhere else and finds the next micro civilization. I think that is more compelling because then the mystique is still there, and it's a better concept. Like, imagine if we just got another Fury Road that was equally as interesting with an entirely brand new place. I think
I mean, that kind of has been the Mad Max formula, right?
Exactly.
It's interesting though, because like in Fury Road, Furiosa was kind of the main character in that movie too, you know? So I think in that sense, where Fury Road was sort of this divergence, and that Mad Max was a main character, but almost felt like a co-main character with Furiosa, that he would want to say, all right, well, we've done a lot of Mad Max stories. Let's do another Furiosa story. This time, let's talk about her past. And I think that's a logical thing to want to do if you've introduced this other kind of compelling, you know, main character in your Max verse, Mad verse. I guess it's not Max verse because he's not, you know, he's got a cameo, but you know.
Yeah, but we also don't know what happens to Furiosa after Fury Road, after she takes over the Citadel, right, and kills Immortan Joe. And like that could have been something interesting that we could have seen as well. Like, I just feel like I didn't need the backstory to Furiosa, because here's the thing, though. Furiosa is a very interesting character, and I think Charlize Theron does an amazing job. I think Anya Taylor-Joy does a very good job of playing Furiosa in this movie. Like, I don't think she was miscast. Well, I think she's not a box office draw, which is a problem, and probably is one of the problems why people didn't want to see this movie, is because she is not super well known, and a lot of the things that she is known for are not action films.
So that's the thing with her in particular. She is an extremely talented actor, and what she's in is generally very well liked.
But like, I like the Queen's Gambit, but I don't. It doesn't make. Right? Yeah, I like the Queen's Gambit, but it doesn't make me want to watch a Mad Max movie.
She did play Princess Peach in the Mario Brothers animated film that came out just I think it was just last year, right? So there is some blockbuster history for Anya Taylor-Joy there, you know, that you may not know.
And also, like, I like Chris Hemsworth, and I think he does a good job with the part that's given to him in this movie. But I also am not mega excited about him being a villain. And I also think it's kind of distracting to have him as a villain because he's so recognizable as Thor, even with the prosthetics and the makeup they use in this film, and your wife aside. I got very distracted because the thing about Immortan Joe is Immortan Joe was the actor who played him was in the original Mad Max movie. He was Toe Cutter in the original Mad Max movie, but he was, you know, let me find his name. He's not a well-known actor, but he did such a great job as Immortan Joe. But the thing about it is him being unrecognizable, both because of the makeup and because of the actor. Hugh Keys Byrne and the mask. He was actually, I mean, Immortan Joe was in this film, but it was a different actor because he died. You know, and so it just goes to show that you don't actually even need the same actor, because the actor they replaced him with in Furiosa was also good. But the thing about
we have two replaced actors in this, and the person who plays Mad Max in a stunt double was his, or Mad Max in the cameo was a stunt double in Fury Road, which I thought was kind of fun. It's not Tom Hardy down there.
But my point about the villain is that by making him a less famous actor, it's actually more menacing in many ways, or at least making him unrecognizable. And I think that's the problem, is Chris Hemsworth is just too recognizable in this movie that I find it off-putting. It's like it's like Christopher Walken as the Emperor in Dune, you know. It's just like
it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. That's true.
I agree. I do agree with you a little bit on that point. Like I said, I thought he did a good job of really differentiating himself from Thor in like every way you possibly could doing this role. But at the end of the day, you still are thinking Chris Hemsworth the entire time. And to a certain extent, like, I've seen enough stuff with Anya Taylor-Joy in it to like be like thinking that the entire time. But I mean, you can levy that argument against Charlize Theron too, I suppose.
I think it's less jarring when they're the protagonists of the movie rather than when they're supposed to be a mysterious villain that is menacing.
When they're playing a role that's very different from what you're used to seeing them in, I suppose, sure. But like, but I thought he did a good job though. Like, you know, as far as like playing that part, like, I thought he did well with what was, you know, like I was like, this guy can be kind of a crazy villain.
Yeah, he did well with what was given to him, but unfortunately, like, he himself is just too distracting. So anyway, to go off of Fury Road, the Fury Road thing is that what's so great about Fury Road is that we're just put into this film basically immediately, where he's immediately captured. He's sent to the Citadel. Furiosa is in the middle of leaving. They go on this chase, and it is basically, the whole movie is just one long epic car chase. And what's so funny about that movie, DoA, is they get to the end of it, and then they immediately turn back around and just go back to the place they started. It's great, right? You never see any movie that's just like, okay, we're going, oh, turn right around, we go back, and then that's the entire film.
You know, that's one thing I was curious about with Furiosa is will it be able to capture the same amount of nonstop tension from second one to the final second? And then the answer is, of course not, because Fury Road is a very special film that no one will ever be able to recreate, nor should they try, because it should stand alone. I felt like some of that tension was there from time to time, but it's not going to be Fury Road, and it doesn't need to be Fury Road to me. It needs to just be another story in this world, right? And so I tried to, I guess I didn't try to, but I felt like it was easy for me to separate this movie from Fury Road, in that there's never going to be another Fury Road. That was lightning in a bottle. That was 1 in a million. That was just one of the greatest movies ever made. So I wasn't expecting that from this movie at all. I just wanted to be entertained. I just wanted to have a good story and learn a bit more about the world, and I got that. Yeah, so I really enjoyed it for that. I'm curious what you thought about this, since you're so positive about the rest of the movie. What did you think about the character named Praetorian Jack, who I think of as my name for him is Mid Max, because he's so bad. He's basically Mad Max. He even refers to himself as a road warrior. But like, that was the one character in the movie where I was like, all right, this is just our Mad Max facsimile, right? And I know he's not. I know story-wise he's not. Completely different role. He's well employed by Morton Joe. He's not a wanderer like Max is. Like, I know there are very different things about this character, but you made him look just like Mad Max. You gave him the shoulder pads and everything, and he's just got a little bit of a softer, friendlier face than Mel Gibson and Tom Hardy later, had when they were portraying Max. And he's very friendly, hence he is mid-Max to me. He's not quite mad. He's mid.
If you survive everything we take on together, you'll have all the skills you need to get wherever you want to go.
He's also badly written. I mean, you say you like this movie, so
I do like this movie a lot. That character, I'm not. That's my least favorite.
But that character's the whole movie. He's the whole movie.
No, he's not.
Yes, he
is.
He's
not.
Everything about everything about this movie turns around Praetorian Jack in the worst ways possible. So, one of the things about this movie that is completely terrible, and another reason why Dementus is not a particularly menacing villain, and although I do agree with your points about Dementus, that doesn't make a good villain. He is a weak villain inherently because he cannot keep his grip on power. Right.
But he can take things, which makes him scary because he can find a way to mess. He's like the kid who knocks over your block tower, right? He's never going to make a nice block tower himself, but you're worried that he's going to come over and knock over your block tower, right? Like, that's him. And if he's capable of doing that, even if you set up around a lot of defenses and you think you're smarter than this guy, if he still comes in and knocks it over anyway, that's a threat. And I think they had that with this character.
Let me talk about how contrived some of the plot points in this movie are. So, Praetorian Jack is like the king of the contrived, because apparently he has like a love relationship or like a blooming romance with Furiosa, which is also I thought there was a bit of an age
gap there too, which felt a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know, I don't know how much of an age gap there actually was, but between those characters, but it seemed like it was a lot. So, and they kind of hinted at it. They didn't really like come out and be like they're romantically involved, but it seemed to heavily imply that they were intending to be. So that was a bit odd, but hey, it's the wasteland. Good people are few and far between. If it works, it works. I don't know. I don't know what the age gap was. I'm just saying it was a little bit uncomfortable. That's all.
So this movie is so contrived because it needs this relationship to work between Praetorian Jack and Furiosa, because that is her origin story. And when I say it's all about Praetorian Jack, it is, because her origin story is Praetorian Jack teaching her. That is what it is.
He's her Obi-Wan, right? He's her mentor, right? And which makes the relationship thing a little bit even more so. But But that's a role he's supposed to fulfill, where it's like, you can still be good in this world of madness, right? You can still be noble. That's the whole point of his character. What I didn't like, and I agree with you here, is that we didn't need a character like that to have her experience that. We could have given her that through other means than just giving her mid-max. So like I said, I really like this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a good movie. That is the one part of the movie that I did not like.
Just wait till I talk about how contrived the entire plot is. You ready?
Sure, go on. Please do.
So this whole plot is super contrived and lacks any kind of stakes. Okay. And the king of this is because they have to have the moment of Praetorian Jack and Furiosa, him being like, I'm going to teach you. Okay. So what leads up to that moment, DoA? How does that moment occur?
I'm trying to, she sneaks onto the tanker to try to escape, and she ends up filling in for the mechanic and saving the day.
Mm-hmm. Who's attacking them?
Yeah. Who's attacking them? It's Dementus and stuff.
Nope.
No, it's the biker guys. It's a biker gang, right? Yeah.
It's the breakaway biker gang that is no
Oh,
longer
right. It's the Octoboss and his crew. Yeah. They could have explained him breaking away a little bit better than just one line, like he can't even keep his teams together. They need to do a little bit more than that.
Isn't that weird?
They did do a little bit. They
weird?
showed him being angry at Dementus earlier.
I will lead you to.
I did like the Octoboss as a character.
I will lead you to this conclusion. So
okay,
they create a massive, by the way, derivative war rig fight from Mad Max Fury Road. Super derivative.
You're not wrong there. You're not
super
wrong there.
derivative. Even though I will admit that like the fans and the motorcycles and everything were extremely cool.
The action elements within the set piece are different, though.
Yes, they're good, but it doesn't feel original. And the whole thing about it feels incredibly contrived because they give you a throwaway line of, Dementus can't even keep his gang under control. Now they're just randomly attacking people. And here's a 20-minute action sequence of them being attacked. And the entire point of this attack isn't to drive a plot point. It's merely to make it so that Praetorian and Jack and Furiosa have this moment of, I will teach you, young Padawan. And I'm like, really? The action set piece, the core action sequence of this movie doesn't even have to do with Dementus or the main plot. It's just a random raid from some vigilante, from some rogue like biker gang. It's lame, DoA.
Is that a problem, or is that just an indication?
It's a horrible problem. It's bad writing. Or is that
just an indication of the world?
No,
being mad?
The world
These things just happen in such a mad world.
It's bad. The entire plot of Fury Road is that you have Immortan Joe in pursuit. It is the action sequences are based around the main narrative, not a random throwaway line. Like, hey, DoA, here's a question. Where was the fight between Immortan Joe and Dementus? Where was it?
Immortan Joe didn't need to fight him. He's too good for that. That's the thing.
It doesn't happen. He rides to the Citadel. They do a voiceover, DoA.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
There's no climax to this movie. The climax comes from a random biker attack.
I feel like all of your points, though, are that like this movie isn't as good as Fury Road. Yes, nobody was expecting that.
It's mediocre.
What's the problem with it? Yeah,
it's a mediocre movie.
You can enjoy mediocre movies.
It's a 5 out of 10. It's a 5 out of 10.
I think this is better than the 5 out of 10. Come on, think about some of the stuff you've seen lately. Think about the horrors you've witnessed on Disney Plus. This is definitely better than 5 out of 10.
6 out of 10. It's not that much better.
In this movie and television streaming series economy, this is absolutely much better
6.
than a
You win.
Than
it's
mediocre.
a 6 out of 10. It's a 6 out of 10.
Give me a 7. Give me a 7.
No.
Come on. 6.5. I'll meet you at 6.5. I'm not going any lower. 6.5 going once. All right, good. 6.5 out of 10. So clearly better than a mediocre film. Got it. It's
no, mediocre is,
on the high side of mediocre.
On the high side.
It's
but
like
anyway.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's just like, it's like, why are we having the most important action sequence off of a throwaway line with a villain we don't really know about or care about, who's just some like random Dementus lieutenant who like decides to attack?
He's got big horns on his helmet. He just looks cool. See, here's
Dude,
one of the reasons
his
why
fucking like octopus kite is super cool on his.
Oh, that's so awesome!
It looks
right?
amazing. Yeah,
I love that visual effect. But like, here's one of the things. Here's one of the reasons why I give this movie such a pass for this kind of stuff, for the stuff that bothers you, is because one of the things I love the most about this world is just how memorable all of the side characters are. And Octobot is definitely a side character. The Immortan Joe family is like, everyone's super weird, like Scrotus Rictus, the People Eater. And I admit, with the People Eater, there was maybe a little bit too much nipple play going on. That was distracting. People Eater. I mean, I know you got holes cut in your shirt for your nipples, but like, you don't need to be playing with them 24/7, man. If the piercing is that itchy, take it out. It's probably infected. Warm compress a couple times a day, and then put it back in later or something. Too much nipple play from the People Eater there, I gotta say. But then you got like the Organic Mechanic, the Octoboss, like I mentioned, History Man, which is great. I loved Chris Hemsworth cheerleader. Smeg, I think was his name.
Yeah, obviously like a Smee reference from Peter Pan, right?
Which is great. I loved that. Maybe that explains that Dementus's nose. It's very Captain Hook like, But I loved that he had this like cheerleader that was like acting out his feelings next to it. That's so Mad Max.
It was great.
These characters are
the History Man was also great, by the way.
Everything is just fun to look at on the screen with these movies. Like, all the characters are so captivating.
The motorcycle chariot is great.
Yes, the visual part of this world is just so captivating in a way that a lot of movies are not. So even though I agree that the main action set piece with the Octobots attacking the war rig and all that was strange, because it didn't really it didn't further the main conflict, the main character conflict, right? That said, I just enjoyed watching it so much. And even though the framework was derivative of the war rig fight in Fury Road, the action moments throughout were unique. The big spinning thing on the back, having to fix engine number 2 while you're driving along. Like, there's a lot
happened in Mad Max Fury Road as well, but the second
did it really? Did they have to fix the engine?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It's so derivative. But anyway, I don't mind it. Doesn't matter to me. Who would you be in the Mad Max universe? Just as a side thing. What would your job be in the Mad Max?
I like the Organic Mechanic. I think that's a fun. Or the History Man. The History Man seems good.
I would just be a People Eater, man. I would just be like tweaking the no. I would do the flying motorcycle thing. That sounds like a lot of fun with a big octopus kite.
Yeah,
I guess those survived the apocalypse.
Or the parachutes. You can sew those.
Just made one, yeah. That was neat.
And I think that's going back to expectations around this movie. I think it's also a problem that it's a prequel, because it really does eliminate the suspense when you know that there's no danger to Furiosa. Dementus is going to die because he's not in Fury Road. You know Immortan Joe is going to be just A-okay.
Don't you just accept all these things with any prequel, though? And this is one of the reasons why I don't like prequels in general. So I agree that this is a negative, but if you're going to watch it, if you're going to choose to watch a prequel, don't you just have to sort of accept that?
I mean, I do wish that I had seen, I could erase Fury Road from my memory and maybe watch this first. And I'd be curious to know if people watch this without having seen Fury Road, what their experience was.
I talked to a friend that hadn't seen Fury Road, and he asked me about Furiosa, and I was like, you probably could watch Furiosa first and then watch Fury Road. And I was like, is that actually a better order if you haven't seen him? And I'm like, I told him to do that. By the way. I said, I was like, you should watch Furiosa first. So that is interesting, because I feel like a lot of prequels you can't do that because they have too much of a burden of knowledge of the other movie going into the prequel. But this one, I feel like you don't need that. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think there are things about this prequel that are enjoyable, but I think the problem is it's just like it's worse than Fury Road in basically every single way. it could
But
be.
of course,
worse.
it's going to be nothing. It's because nothing's. It's not bad because it's bad. It's bad because nothing is, or it's worse than Fury Road because like nothing will be as good as Fury Road.
Well, it's because we already maxed out the world that existed in Fury Road, and we didn't need to explore it anymore. So basically, everything we already said, like the war rig is the ultimate machine that Immortan Joe has. So we can't one up that, because otherwise it would be weird in the context of Fury Road. So we have to go back to building the other war rig and then have another war rig chase. Also, just purely from a visual perspective, DoA, and we all know, there is a book about this guy. It's called Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, which is about the filming of Fury Road. And if you don't know Fury Road, it's a miracle it got made, because this is true, guys. This is true. So what happened in Fury Road was they were going to film it in Australia. Furiosa was filmed in Australia. Mm-hmm. What happened was there was a once in a century storm that happened where they were filming in Australia, which caused the desert to bloom. So they couldn't film there because it was just covered in green. So they had to pack up all of their shit, including all the custom cars that they made that didn't fit neatly in shipping containers, make custom shipping containers, put them all on a boat and send them to Namibia in Africa to film that movie. And what's so funny is they didn't actually tell the studio that they had shipped the cars until they were on the boat and had left, because
love it.
So they basically just did it. And then we're like, hey, studio executives, we shipped everything to Namibia. Okay, bye.
It is great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, read that book, read the story of how Fury Road was made, because it is a trip. It is a whole adventure in itself, for sure.
We knew anyway, it was all very dangerous. Like all of the, when they flipped the war rig in the first movie, they literally flipped it over, and there was a stunt driver in there, and like the guys were actually on poles on the top of that thing. There is CGI obviously in Fury Road, but it is really. But the thing about Fury Road is that it's more epic because there are more cars. So I understand why Dementus has these motorcycle gangs and like why it exists, because he's not supposed to be as powerful and everything like that. But visually, even though they do some really cool aerial shots of like hundreds of motorcycles and everything like that, it's just less interesting than all the war rigs and the crazy, car from Fury Road with the speakers and the guy with the guitar on the front. It's just
the
less
wagon.
epic.
Yeah, of course.
It's just less epic. It's just less epic. And even though they have the fucking super cool motorcycle chariot that I love, and also they do a bunch of references, DoA, to Greek mythology in this one, including using the war rig as a Trojan horse. And then at the end, Praetorian Jack gets dragged around behind the motorcycle chariot like Hector, at the end of the Iliad. So that reference doesn't actually ever go anywhere, unfortunately. It's just a parallel that has no meaning, which is kind of a bummer, because like if we had gone more into Iliad parallels, I think this could be really cool, but they just kind of steal it and don't do anything with it, which I also find to be kind of boring. Because you could have done some really interesting stuff, I think, with like Achilles Hector rivalries, but it just doesn't ever actually really manifest. And so there are aspects of this that are compelling, but it feels less epic. It feels derivative. It's not the villain. I had a significantly less visceral reaction to Dementus than I did to Immortan Joe in Fury Road. Like Immortan Joe is just a lot scarier. Just a lot scarier.
I think the thing is, if you hadn't seen Immortan Joe, would you be as negative about Dementus?
Yes, because he's a weak villain where the action is happening because he's weak. Literally.
I think, but I think that's part of what makes him scary it's part of kind of what makes the Joker scary in Batman too, is because like he's not like capable of keeping what he takes, right? It's just a lot of you're afraid because you don't really know what he's gonna do, because he doesn't really ever have like a great plan, but he's capable, right? He's capable of executing on whatever he decides to do in a very effective way. And so that's what makes him scary, is that like you don't know what he's going to do, but whatever he decides to do, he's probably going to do it really well. And he's going to make a hard time for you, So again, like I think to me that's what makes that villain threatening, because of because it's got that obvious weaknesses, but then an obvious strength in in an area that really makes things tough for you, you know, or makes it tough for anyone, right? So again, I think that kind of villain is kind of compelling, right? Because they're almost scarier, right? Again, you can understand a villain like Immortan Joe, right? Where he wants to take something, and once he's got it, he's like, all right, I wanted this because I'm capable of leading. I'm going to do this kind of stuff. Where other ones, they just want things, and they only care about themselves. And once they have it, they have no intention of taking care of it. We've seen leaders like that in our world, and I think that is a very frightening thing, you know? And so to see that kind of type of leader in this movie, I think there's some maybe parallels there underneath the surface, is something threatening, you know? So yeah, visually, it's not the type of person where if you meet him in alley, you're going to be horrified, right? But then when the things play out that they do, you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. So again, that's just me. But I think
the visceral reaction to Dementus is just less too. Like there's something really otherworldly about Immortan Joe or Darth Vader, right? That makes them super memorable.
You pick two of the best movie villains of all time, though. You know, this movie never had a shot against them. You know, and it wasn't made to have a shot against them.
Well, no, it just turns out that I can, you know, just appreciate better art and just watch that instead of watching stuff that's worse. I know it's a wacky concept on this show.
You can, but it doesn't mean you can't enjoy that other stuff. You know, it's like I enjoy a really great hamburger. But that doesn't mean once in a while I'm not going to cave and get like a Big Mac or something and not enjoy it. You know, I'm still going to enjoy that Big Mac. You know, other better burgers exist, you know, but maybe I'm in a position where the Big Mac is the right call for the moment, you know? Yeah. That's my allegory.
I just don't think Furiosa is a Big Mac. That's
Furiosa is at least a quarter pounder with cheese. 6.5. Remember, 6.5 out of 10. You agreed to this. Can I talk about my negatives for this movie? Because I do have some negatives. I think one thing that George Miller's always done in the Mad Max film, done like sped up camera here and there, and it works when it's done in a way to make a scene look unsettling, or it's done in a way to like make the car action a little bit quicker. That's done all the time, and usually you don't even know. In this movie, they did it to a noticeable degree way too much, to the extent that George Miller became a reverse Zack Snyder to me for a second, where it's like Zack Snyder goes too far on the slow-mo side, George Miller too much on the fast-mo side. I made a comment on social media that if they made a movie together, every scene would just play out at a normal speed. You just balance the two out, you know? And so I did think there was too much of that. You know, there's too much of the fast motion, I think.
So on that approach, sometimes he does speed things up, but he records, for you guys who don't know, he does record these films at a higher than normal frame rate.
Sure,
And what he does is he will speed it up and slow it down at times, and he will also just remove frames. So what that does is it creates, you know, normal films are at 24 frames per second. So what it does is it creates this like jerking effect, which is very noticeable in the Mad Max movies. And he says he does it because it mimics the silent film era, which would like skip frames. So that's why if you watch old silent films, it'll look kind of, the action will just like be smooth, and like jerk suddenly.
Well, it's also a vehicle to make something unsettling too.
Yes. And it's really effective. And it's something that I really like about the Mad Max movies. But I agree. It was, even though I do genuinely really like it, I do think it was overplayed in this film. So I agree.
Yeah, that was kind of disappointing to me, because I'm like, George Miller, you've done this so well in like all of your other films. Like, why are you overusing it now? Like, you just do what you were doing before, you know? But yeah, I think my other complaint too was that the music wasn't different enough from Fury Road. You know, again, iconic soundtrack, sure. Junkie XL did a great job with that. But this movie, I didn't feel like could stand on its own soundtrack wise. A lot of it sounded like kind of like if you took like a royalty free you put like Fury Road in a royalty free music library, you get this kind of stuff, you know, where it's like, yeah, that kind of reminds me of Fury Road. Like it should have stood on its own a little bit more, and I don't think there was enough uniqueness put into the soundtrack. My other main complaint was that it looked a little bit too CG at times, which again, that one doesn't bother me that much, because like you're never going to be able to do what you did in Fury Road again. We've gone over that already. I went into it knowing that, you know, we were going to get more obvious looking CG in this one. So I didn't enjoy seeing it, but I know why it happened, because people's lives were at stake, and this was a way to protect them. So that's okay, I guess. I like,
and you probably you can't get away probably with things in Australia the same way you can get away with them in Namibia. I'm just gonna guess on that one.
Fair point. Yeah, I don't know if legal protections are quite there, but yeah, I think
apparently there was quite a lot of environmental damage to Namibia that maybe the Australian government was not too keen on.
Sorry, Namibia. Thanks. Well, overall, I enjoyed this movie. For me, I would give it like an 8.5 out of 10. I really liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to watching it again at some point. I thought it enhanced the character of Furiosa, where I enjoyed seeing her origin story. I enjoyed more definition to the universe and sort of learning more about the interplay between these 3 cities in the wasteland, the 3 wasteland fortresses. I think that's a really cool concept, and so I'm glad to see that fleshed out a little bit more. And I like the tension of some of the driving scenes and things, and just you mentioned the scene of these hundreds of motorcycles going across the desert and all that. That's cool and very visually beautiful, but there's also an element of like tension and discomfort with it, because you know that you do not want to be anywhere. You know that is a dangerous thing you're seeing, and I just like that element of like constant danger that you kind of feel in the universe too. So, yeah, I mean, is it the strongest entry in the Max verse saga, Mad Max Saga? I guess. Maybe not, but is it a fun movie to watch? Would I recommend people go see it? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a fun movie to go see in theaters. They need your help. Go see it in theaters. I'm glad I saw it. I don't know. It'll be on streaming services in like 2 weeks anyway, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I have no regrets seeing Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. I just had a good time. Good, solid, above average.
I will reverse, film. And I will say good things about this movie. So I did, because you said the things you didn't like. I think Anya Taylor-Joy's performance is really good as Furiosa. I think she brings a lot of weight to the role, which is impressive because, like other Mad Max movies, there's not a lot of dialogue, and she's basically mute for a lot of this movie. And also the girl who played even younger Furiosa, Isla Brown, I thought, Alila Brown. I don't know how to say her name. Did you hear about
what they did with the two to bridge the time gap with that?
No.
Apparently they used some CG trickery to just age her up a little bit throughout some of the scenes, and then when they incorporated Anya Taylor-Joy, they de-aged slightly and then just tweaked it up a little bit over time. Because if you watch the movie, it's a very natural progression between the two actors. So that was kind of a cool little element of it.
Yeah, and like shout out to George Miller, who recast the role instead of de-aging, because that was definitely on the table. I know that there was talk about de-aging Charlize Theron for this movie, which mercifully did not happen. So I think Anya Taylor-Joy does a very good job. I think the sound mixing is still fucking insane in this movie, though. Like the sound editing and the sound design, the sound mixing, it was true in Fury Road as well. Mm-hmm. But in these movies, the sound of the cars in the movie theaters is incredible. The sound of the engines. Yeah, it really does. Like the audio is such a core part of these movies. And I think, not only in Fury Road, but in this one as well, that is done beautifully. And so just the a lot of the aerial shots and a lot of the set pieces are really fun to see in the theaters. I just think that, I just wish we had gotten a different kind of film, a different kind of Mad Max film. Like I wish we had gotten a sequel. I wouldn't say no to, an older Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, version where they're traveling to a new location. I don't need explanations for what happened.
Well, we may never get it now because people didn't go and see this movie. So word on the street is that we might not ever get another Mad film. So or Max Mad versus
George Miller's also old. Like I think that's the other problem. He was 70 when Fury Road came out. And he is 79 now. So I mean, these are not easy films to shoot. And so I think it's pretty demanding. We've heard about how demanding the shoots are for the actors, but equally for the director, who has to be out there in the elements doing these movies for 14 hours a day or 16 hours a day. I think there's going to be a point where he's just not actually capable of making these movies anymore. And as much as I was disappointed by this film. I still think George Miller is a fucking amazing director, and I love the movies he's made. Like, I don't know why he made the movie 3,000 Years of Longing, which is excellent. But when I saw the preview, which is about a narratology scholar, so somebody who studies narratives and mythology, who finds a lamp in Istanbul and gets wishes from Idris Elba, who's a genie, and Tilda Swinton stars in this movie. I literally saw this. I saw the preview of this film, DoA, and I was like, why did they make this movie just for me? I'm the only person who wants this movie. I want it really badly.
Was it good?
Yes, it's very good.
Oh, all right. I haven't seen it.
But
I haven't seen Happy Feet either, though. So sorry, George. I only watch Mad Max films, I guess.
George Miller's great, and I really love him, which is why I was disappointed by this film, because I think his world building is great. 3,000 Years of Longing is a banger that nobody has seen. I don't blame you for not seeing it, DoA. Literally nobody's seen that movie.
I remember that movie coming out, but I guess I didn't notice the Idris Elba as a genie thing as much. If I would have, I probably would have seen it, because that sounds great. I'd love to see him play a genie.
It is great. Tilda Swinton's awesome. You know,
it's
everything I wanted out of that movie. But I also I feel like George Miller is making films that don't have audiences now, including this movie.
Hey, he's 80. What more does the guy need to prove? I think he should just make whatever he wants to make, you know. And he wanted to make another Madverse film, so here we are, you know.
No, I just find it hilarious, because I literally saw this and I was like, George Miller directs Tilda Swinton, who's a narrative professor, finding a genie. I'm like, why would anyone but me watch this movie? I want to watch this movie super badly. I'm all over this shit. But why would anyone else want to watch it?
I don't know anyone
Turns
else
out they
who has
didn't.
watched it. It maybe was just you. It's possible. It's possible. Wow.
But anyway, watch 3,000 Years of Longing. It is great.
And watch Furiosa too, because it's really fun. And it's a type of movie you want to see in the theater. I don't want to be all who's the person in the movie theater ads that's like enjoying it way too much? What's her name again? Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on this? You know. She's like, she sits down in the theater, she's like, we feel the magic.
Is it Nicole Kidman? Is it the Nicole Kidman ad?
Yes, that's one. That's the ad I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm not trying to be Nicole Kidman here, being like I believe in an afterlife now that I'm a movie in a movie theater. I'm not like that, you know. I'm just saying what you're saying, where it's a big screen thing, right? The shots are made to be seen on a giant screen. The sound is made to be heard through a giant screen system. So yeah, I think it is a movie that you want to see in the, and you're gonna have the theater all to yourself. That's the best part. So
well, I saw it in Korea here. I saw it in Korea though. I saw it in the middle of the day on a weekday, and there were actually surprisingly there were like 20 people in that theater.
Oh wow!
At like 1 p.m. on a weekday. So I think the international take might actually be better.
We saw it on like a Friday night. Was it Friday or Saturday night? At like prime time. 6:30 p.m. and there was like maybe 20 people in the theater. So it was, yeah, I was looking around. I was like, oh man, because I heard it wasn't doing well, but you know,
well, I think it has been doing better internationally. It's actually made 65 million outside of the U.S. and 50 million inside the U.S. So maybe it's one of those films that's just going to do better internationally. I don't know, but it didn't seem like.
I hope so.
Especially for the time I saw it, I was surprised by the number of people that were in the theater.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I mean, look, I do think it has international appeal, especially because there's not a lot of dialogue in this film, which, you know, when it's in English and other people,
that does help.
You know, it's subtitled. You know, I think it probably does help. But yeah,
we let Anya Taylor-Joy's giant eyes do most of the acting in this movie. It's like that, like a very, very expressive ocular region.
She has such a tiny face and such. She looks like an anime character. It's crazy.
Kind of a little bit.
She has like a small triangular face, and just like,
yeah. Which again, great casting for somebody who, you know, is pretending to be for most of your movie. Like, yeah, the eyes are the window to the soul, right? Isn't that what they say? And I feel like I know the soul of Furiosa and her love for Mad Max.
I like the term mid-max. That's great. He is he's thoroughly mid, by the way. The other problem is like nobody actually cares about Praetorian Jack. So like I didn't care when he died.
No, me neither. I was like, oh, the Dragon Ball, it's taking a long time. But like, yeah, that's the thing. Like I was like, oh no. But yeah, I immediately thought mid-max. I'm like, this guy looks like Mad Max, but he's like the softer, rounder version of mid-max, or Mad Max rather. So he's mid-max, and he was thoroughly average in every way. And yeah, that was the interesting element of the film.
I'm so disappointed because we could have had a really badass mentor for her, and we just got that instead.
Yeah, it was strange. That is, like I said, that is by far my least favorite part of the movie. And that's saying a lot because there's a guy named Scrotus in the movie and another guy that just plays with his nipples the entire time he's on screen. So Mad Max had he had a lot to go through to be able to be my least favorite thing in the film. And he did it.
Funny.
That's the only thing that stands out about Mad Max.
I don't even blame Tom Burke, the actor, because the character just has nothing to do.
No, I mean he played the character. No, nothing against the actor at all. Like I thought, in fact, I thought the acting was weirdly the acting was the best part of the character. I feel like he performed the role exactly as it was meant to be performed. Yeah. So on an acting front, well done. On a writing front, well, kind of mid. On a costuming front, why did you make him look just like Mad Max? Down to the shoulder pad. Why?
Well, in general, the costume is very cool. I love what they did. As you mentioned earlier with the parachute with Dementus, I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was sick. Yeah, all the other costuming is so great too. That's like why is Mid Max such a rehash? You know,
he could have been like looking like the Octobos or something like that. It looks super cool.
Was I the only one who, when Furiosa pulled the little engine thing on her shoulder and started up the little like engine thing, and then reached down there? Was I the only one who thought she was like castrating him for a second there?
Yeah, because I mean that wasn't great.
Her hand was out of the frame, and you heard this he was kind of like, I was like, oh my gosh, are they going? She was just cutting the chains around the teddy bear. I don't know where we were meant to think there, but it's slightly uncomfortable.
All right. Well, if I was in this movie, I would be watching George Miller spray some chrome on his mouth and jump on something, and then I would yell mediocre at him.
Well, we have witnessed George Miller's extensive film career, and he's made a lot of really interesting stuff. So, so in all seriousness, shout out to George Miller for making the movies he wants to make and making them memorable for sure. Like again, every frame of that movie, I'm seeing something that is like compelling to me. So story stuff aside, that one of my favorite thing about just Mad Max in general is just like everything on the screen is always just so weird, and I love that.
Yep.
Except for Mid Max, he's very normal.
So up to you guys. I wish I could delete this movie from my brain. I didn't want more backstory. I didn't want more exposition. If you guys don't want more exposition, don't go see this movie. Don't ruin it for yourself. I managed to never see the fourth Indiana Jones movie to this day, and I still haven't seen.
You did see the fifth though.
I did because of this show, and it wasn't
exactly.
It was okay.
It was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah,
it was all right.
Yeah.
Was
that movie better than
also
this
mediocre?
Movie? Which one? Well, here's a good question. Here's one last little topic. Was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny better than Furiosa? Which is the better film? It's a tough one.
So they're actually like equal in my mind.
Okay. I don't want to have any recency bias.
I think I liked Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny better. Slightly. It would be like a 7 instead of a 6.5, but it's very subtle.
Even with that big long chase scene with like his niece
and the
her,
bad
like, jilted
CGI.
Lover. Yeah, you sure about that?
All right. Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm leaning towards Furiosa.
Yeah.
All right. So let's recap. In the space of an hour, we've gotten Monty to go from, oh, this film is terrible, I hate it so much, to 6.5 out of 10, and better than Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'd call it for the DoA verse. We did it.
No, I never said it was terrible. I said right at the start it was mediocre.
Oh, okay.
That's what I said. I said right at the start it was mediocre.
The high end of mediocre, though. The high side of mediocre. Yeah.
But
Furiosa. Go see it. Save the movie theaters. They're gonna die anyway. You can't save them.
You can't save them.
Go enjoy it while it lasts. That's really
the real problem is that look, I like going to movie theaters, but I understand why they're dying. Like, it's
so expensive now.
The sticky floor dealing with other people experience is not amazing.
Well, I mean, for me, it's like, living in LA, it's like $20 a person to go see a movie. Like, I don't know if any movie is worth that,
Well, it's also like, that most people have like 4K TVs in their house now. So
a lot of people have good setups. Like, I don't, but a lot of people do. But so I'm having a hard time justifying the cost of a movie now. Even if I can pay for that, right? Like, do I want to? Is a movie worth $20 per person?
Even new releases on streaming services, if you want to get one from Amazon Prime, are like $20, but it's for everybody who's watching.
The movie, then they can't tell how many people are in front of the TV yet. So it is getting tough. And the thing is like, I feel like I'm like, in the, speaking of mid, I'm like the mid of middle class right now. I'm definitely not upper middle class. I'm definitely not lower middle class. I'm like right in the mid, right? But so for a lot of people though, who are lower than that, like, I don't think if my budget was much lower, I would want to pay that much to go see a movie. I'd rather just wait, even though I wouldn't get to enjoy the experience of seeing theater, which I love seeing movies in theaters. But they're getting too expensive, and that is.
It's also like it's almost in a weird spot where it's like it's too expensive to just like go by itself. I either want it to be cheaper, or this may sound weird, more expensive. So like one of the things I like is Alamo Drafthouse, right? Which is where I can go get a cocktail and like dinner, and they serve it to me while I'm eating the movie. So it feels like a more complete experience. And there's a bar that I can go to and talk about the movie afterwards. I'm kind of more into that.
I would rather just focus purely on the movie, Like I usually don't get a lot of concessions when I go to a movie theater. I usually just go and like.
Well, I don't either.
Desire for everyone else to shut up.
But Alamo Drafthouse has very good quality, and then also I can get a cocktail and like a pizza, and it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I've done like the dine-in movies and things. It is fun, but that's what I do for like a Marvel movie. Where I'm like it's like I'm second screening it, but I'm in the theater, Like, oh, these chicken wings are great. Oh, what did Thor just do?
DoA struggles with eating and watching films at the same time.
I do.
He gets so distracted by the food.
That's right.
But anyway, I'm just saying, like, it feels like a more complete experience if I go to an Alamo Drafthouse or the equivalent, where it feels more like a night out. You know what I mean? Or a special occasion. And so that's what I appreciate about it.
I get that.
Whereas like, if I'm just going to watch a movie, I might as well just watch it at home with a halfway decent setup. Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, movie theaters everyone's talking about it right now. There's so many articles out there about like, oh, worst season ever.
Which is very funny because I was just, we were in the It's Jover pandemic area, and then we were like Barbenheimer, we're so Barack, and then now we're back to It's Jover. How did the whiplash has been insane because everybody was saying,
huge.
Yeah, everybody was saying, oh my God, look at these numbers for Barbie and Oppenheimer. Theaters are back. Woo!
That was stupid.
And then all of a sudden, just because of Furiosa, everybody's like, theaters are dead. It was
not just Furiosa.
Garfield.
People are always combining these two. Whenever I read an article about this in the last week or two, it's Furiosa and the Garfield movie.
Nobody, by the way, nobody went to the Garfiosa double.
Garfiosa. Furiofield. That's the thing. It's like you can't combine those two well enough. That's the problem,
I don't know. I'm kind of into Garfiosa, but nobody watched those in the same
Garfield,
day.
A Mad Max Saga. There's no lasagna in the wasteland.
By the way, I didn't even know that movie was coming out. So
no, nobody did. Nobody cares. No kids today even know who Garfield is. We only know because Garfield's a part of our childhoods.
I wish I didn't know what Garfield was.
Really? Didn't Bill Murray do the voice of Garfield at some point?
I don't know.
I really enjoyed, like, when I was a kid, I enjoyed like Halloween special and the Christmas special. And I enjoyed reading the Garfield books when I was in grade school.
Oh, that is trash.
It's grade school, man. I was like under 10 years old.
Calvin Hobbes destroyed Garfield.
I read that too. My favorite was Far Side, actually. The Far Side books are my favorite books to read. But yeah, I mean, Calvin Hobbes is definitely in that arena. Garfield. I mean, that was really kind of like the three. that had books that readily available to
two were
kids
great.
in the 90s.
One was noticeably worse.
I don't know, man. With the Saturday morning cartoon, they had like the farm animals too. I don't know. That was a weird divergence, but it was expanding the universe. It was expanding the Garfield verse, you know.
I feel like now we should go on an odyssey of watching all the Garfield content.
Oh no! I mean, that would be a whole nother podcast. We'd spend years doing the podcast. Do you know how much animated Garfield content there is?
Maybe we should do the Garfield tier list. Let us know, guys, if you want to watch the Monte and DoA Garfield animated tier list.
You don't. You really don't.
I like how, even though I would hate watching this way more than DoA, DoA's the one who's like, please, God, no.
No, I have such limited time. I don't want to spend it rewatching Garfield. Please, no. No, I'd rather watch that like Geico caveman sitcom that they tried to make for a while. I mean, they tried to make that a thing. They're like, these commercials, people love our commercials. I bet they love a sitcom with the Geico caveman. Yeah. No, of course they won't. That's a terrible idea.
Tweet at Gigi DoA if you want the Garfield animated tier list.
The Garfield cinematic universe. Yeah,
yeah, the GCU review.
When does he become a villain? That's my question. Well, he kind of is a villain all the time. He's actually he's the antagonist. Garfield is the antagonist of that series.
Exactly. Think about that. Normal is just abused constantly.
That's true. It's grim. Yeah. I mean, maybe Garfield has more in common with Mad Max than we thought.
Just trying to ship Normal to Abu Dhabi all the time for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I mean, like, depending on where she ends up, could be a very plush gig, I suppose. But yeah, not as much in the 90s. I don't know. I don't know what.
All right, guys. Like well, that's enough. We're now way far away from where we started.
Way off base. Yeah.
Well, you guys decide
Furiosa is pretty good.
If you want to watch Furiosa or not. It's mediocre.
What are we doing next week?
What are we doing next week? We're doing the Acolyte, of course.
That's right. Of course. New Star Wars.
We've actually got tons of stuff this month, guys. We've got the Acolyte, House of the Dragon, the new season of The Boys. So we'll probably be getting into some. God, I hope better. I hope the Acolyte is good, though. I hope it's good.
I would say I'm not sure with any of those three. I'm really not sure.
The Boys took a noticeable downturn at the end of season 3. Yeah, it got pretty bad. So
I really did not like the last episode.
It was terrible.
I've never been a. This will be interesting to do The Boys because I've never really liked
the first 2 seasons quite a bit. But the third season was not it for me.
It's not my kind of show. We're getting on another tangent here. It's not my kind of show, but I've watched all the seasons, so I guess it's compelling enough to keep me coming back. But that'll be an interesting one. Anyway, lots of stuff coming up in June. Will any of it be good? Probably not. But we'll talk about it anyway. That's what we do on the show.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week for new Star Wars. Oh boy, I can't wait. God damn it. See you then.